Today on the channel, we're going to take a look at Guitar World from March of 1998. The King is Back. So this is Guitar World, March 1998. This is an interesting issue of Guitar World because Eddie's talking about Van Halen 3, and that's kind of a topic that's sort of taboo. I mean, you don't really hear anything about it in the media. They've sort of tried to blackball it and forget about that era, which kind of makes sense. But it's really kind of a sad interview in a way. Check out that ad with Slash. He looks really good in that ad. That's cool. That's a cool Guild ad, by the way. All right, there's good old Marshall valve state. I recently picked up a G100 100-watt head that I'm going to review in the future, and it's valve state Marshalls. What can you say? I don't think they're that bad, but Dan Electro advertising the Cool Cat. 1998. Check out all these PVs. Had the whole PV arsenal. The Bandit, the Express, the Audition, the Blazer. No 5150 in there. All right, so there's the Fender digital effects, 16 digital effects with his Fender Strat, this Boss M630 or ME30. Can't read today. Man, they were really cranking out the digital stuff, late 90s, early 2000s. Mesa Boogie, we build keepers. I agree with that. Seymour Duncan. There's a cool picture of Ed. He says in this interview he got that t-shirt from Gary Sharon. So we'll kind of go through this a little bit quick so we can get to this interview, but just kind of combing through some of this stuff here. Back from 98. The sounding board. These letters that people wrote in were always kind of goofy. Look at this guy here. I'm not a guitar player, nor do I aspire to be. I'm just fanatic about the music of Led Zeppelin and find the guitar magazines are great sources of additional information. I cannot ever recall being so impressed with the depth of detail given by Jimmy Page and John Paul Jones on the background of the BBC sessions, as reported in the January 98 issue. Funny, people would write in, they'd pick little snippets and stick in here. Now it's all Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, email. There's Joe Perry advertising his signature Les Paul. Look like a studio. There's no binding on it. Michael Hedges, 53 to 97. Seven Dust, come out and play. Space Monkeys, whoever those guys are. Cold. Frozen Assets. Victoria Williams, Sweet Musings. Union. There's Eric sitting on his plexi. Freebird. Smashing Pumpkins, James Eos steps out on his own. Never listened to that debut album of his. I don't remember it getting a whole lot of press. Pearl Jam, Yield. This was all grunge era, this 98. It was kind of coming to an end, but still pretty strong at 98. A lot of bands not really knowing what to do, trying to find their way. Speaking of trying to find their way, look at this picture of Kirk. He's advertising the KH LTD, the ESP. This was right around the time. This is Load and Reload. Look at Kirk with his sporting that new hairdo. The Mighty Boss Tones. I don't miss ska music. I thought ska was kind of fun in a way, but I don't miss having the ska music on the radio. Well, I don't listen to radio, but anymore. We never stop listening to The Clash. Oh, here we go. There's Eddie and Gary. With an assist from new soulmate, Gary Cherone, Eddie sees the light in triplicate on Van Halen 3. It was funny. We did a photo session the other day, and Gary showed up in a shirt he'd made, and it said, "Who the F is Eddie Van Halen?" I said, "Hey, I want to wear that because I don't know who the F that guy is either. I never met him." The man who just about everyone in the world concedes is the most influential guitarist of his generation gives me a 200-watt smile, chuckles and shrugs. I'm just Ed, just this guy who's connected to something greater that was given to me. That's why it's so hard to talk about this album. For the first time, I was really able to let go and let it happen through me. First, let's start with what's not happened to Eddie over the past year. He's not become a born-again anything, joined a religious cult, or become a manic depressive. And no, you don't have to call him the artist formerly known as Eddie, but there's no denying that Eddie Van Halen is the man and the musician has gone through an extraordinary transformation. To put it as simply as possible, his old ego structure build of fears, insecurity, alcoholism, and other habits has collapsed like a house of cards. Ed awoke to find himself in a serene yet highly charged creative center we all catch glimpses of once in a blue moon, except at least for now, Ed lives there all the time. From that space, he's put together what he unhesitantly calls the most important album of my life, called Van Halen 3. So how about that? Now I've got Gary Cherone. It's like I've been waiting for this guy for 20 years. My first meeting with Eddie 3 earlier in the day makes it clear that even the people who know him best sense that something unprecedented has occurred. George, Ed's studio manager, offers us both coffee. "It's amazing, isn't it?" George marvels. "He's been so relaxed, joyful, and creative over the last 6 months, and he's like this all the time." The album's first single, Without You, is at most a teaser for what's to come. Ed's guitar has taken center stage after years of playing second fiddle, so to speak, to the Van Hagar-era pop wash. Boy, this is a mean interview. But the real heart of the album consists of revelatory cuts like Fire in the Hole. They put hole like WHOLE, like a hole, like like a whole piece of something instead of a hole, like HOLE, like it was. From Afar and Ballot or the Bullet. This is the guitar album Van Halen admirers have been waiting for since, well, 1984. It's positively brimming with raw, unpredictable guitar excursions that are everything you'd always loved about his playing, and yet nothing you've ever heard from him before. Each song features multiple solos that roam and soar wherever the spirit literally moves him. He shifts from wah to wah to slide, or he shifts from wah wah to slide to six-string bass, often in the same song. Besides playing all the guitar, piano, and synth parts, Ed dabbles with percussion, bass, and for the first time actually handles the vocals on one cut. Did I mention he wrote the lyrics to the single? Man, this is a crazy interview, man. A crazy article. Guitar World says, in most older cultures, you don't become a master musician, really, at that depth until you hit 40. Eddie says, that's interesting because now I think of it, everything kind of prepared me for this record. To make this change started when I hit 40, about 3 years ago. That's when I got sober on October 2nd of 94. And I've smoked a few times, had a glass of wine every now and then. But that's when I started to get clear. You were ready to pop out of your ego, and she guided you over that threshold. And it was just like she'd been telling me, you don't understand, Ed, you've been blocking this light. She was right, and now I can't stop the light coming through, and I don't want to stop it. What is this? I was numbing myself because I couldn't deal with things. I was hitting the brakes when I thought I was hitting the gas, and now it's wide open because that ego, all the neuroses and worries and fears just isn't there. Those three little letters don't exist any longer, not in the way they did, meaning I'm not in control anymore. It's not the center of your being. That's it exactly. It's just being now. That's why I titled the thing for Twister, Humans Being. We're just human and we're being. People are born pure. No racism, no hate. Your ego learns all that through fear. Then when you manage to let go of that stuff, you find your real self is free of all that. And your creativity isn't blocked anymore. You realize that you have a direct line to music and God or the universe or whatever you want to call it. You're home, man. I mean, I know I still have a long way to go. Let's see, what's a few things we could talk about on this page? This record's the biggest milestone of my life because the lyrics came first and the music. I had finally had something to bounce off. He says everything comes to him when he's on the toilet. I'd have to call it straight from the pot. The toilet, in other words. For me, Guitar World says, for me that happens when I take a shower. It's one of the places where you don't worry. And the ego doesn't go to the bathroom. And Ed says, this is just a weird interview. Ed says, you are literally relieving yourself of your toxins and then new stuff can come in. I mean, where do ideas from music come from? They're given. The key is to stop thinking and let it happen. I thank God every night that I can keep my chops up so that when I get handed this stuff, I can execute it on guitar to the best of my ability. They say this album. It also reminds me of 1984 in that you're letting the rhythm guitar parts and the riffs rather than your synth pads from the backbone of the song. They form the backbone of the song. The rhythms and the chordal forms you come up with are really incredible. Eddie goes, right, the chords are a series of movements. So, but I don't know what made me really think of doing it, because I wasn't thinking. The less I thought, the better. It's like explaining a color to somebody. How do you do that? It just came through, because that's what the song called for. Like on Once, the melody that I came up with when I saw the lyrics for the first had a certain rhythm and emphasis on that one. It was what it was. I decided I couldn't build on it vocally, so you built musically and rhythmically underneath the melody. From the space you're in now, describe the old, intimidated Ed. One thing that I've learned is that I'm actually a very shy, nervous person, and that I used to be very easily intimidated, and that that's why I used to drink. It was like, in an agitated voice, okay, just give us the riffs, Ed, you stupid. Shut the F up, you know what I mean. And I've learned not to be afraid of being afraid. I named the studio 5150 because it's the police code for an escaped mental patients. What is the greater thing we've connected with, and what does that tell you about why you're on the planet playing the guitar? For one thing, I believe that everyone is born with a gift. I think a lot of people won't bother to acknowledge it or care, and I thank God on my knees every night to be connected to he, she, or whatever it is. Yeah, Ed was definitely in a spiritual place. He was in a good place mentally, for sure. He just was really ready to experiment. They talk about his dad being a musician. Did your dad enjoy your success? Could he appreciate your music? He was so proud. He'd sit up the monitor board and he'd just be crying. He was so proud, and I'd be on stage looking at him crying. He was just, I wish he could be around longer to see my son. They talk a little bit more about his dad. Then he says, thank God for music, man. This is getting deep. Very end of the interview. Wouldn't you approach playing it live the same way you did recording it, by letting go and allowing yourself to be in that room of creative flow? That's what I was going to get to. Since my therapist said, go to that room, I haven't been able to get out of that room, which is a blast. And Valerie has started going, when are you going to see that therapist again? When are you going to get out of that damn room and get in the bedroom? But I swear to God, I just can't stop. It just keeps coming. They say there's an inner faucet you can eventually use to balance the flow a bit. Eddie says, I know, but after 40 years of whatever, of being in pain, of feeling beaten down, I want to stay wet. It's like, spreads his arms. Give me a couple of years of letting it flow. Thank you. Yeah, that really explains a lot. After this didn't do well, Eddie really took it poorly. I mean, sounds like he was really proud and he was really in a good place. And everybody just totally, abandoned that album, man. He went through a lot of personal stuff after that too, with his cancer and his hip replacements, his divorce. Started drinking a lot again. There's Motley Crue. Looks like Vince was back in the band at that point. Crosby didn't last long at all. Saw some interesting YouTube videos the other day of Motley Crue doing some rehearsal footage in the 90s with Crosby. They sounded really good. Nikki 6 says here, I love being a musician. I love being an entertainer. I love to express myself. Well, don't we all? There's Morello. Doing some reviews here. Yngwie Malmsteen, they gave Facing the Animal a 2-star review. Yes, got it 2 stars. Open Your Eyes. Government Mule 4 stars. For Dose. Some of these bands I don't know. $1 Billion Babies. Of course, that's like a old like classic rock album. They're looking at. That's a great record. Clearly. Boy, what a difference. You know, I've done a lot of old guitar mags from the 80s and how it was all hair metal, and not a glimpse of it in here. There's Steve doing his thing, but still. There's a cool picture of Nielsen. If you ever get a chance, check out the collection, the Gibson video of the collection with Rick Nielsen. Man, does that guy have some awesome vintage gear. He's got so many old Les Pauls. He was talking about how back when he was young you could buy them so cheap. So he's amassed that collection. All right, here's an inside poster of Eddie. We'll get a picture of this here. I'll scroll down a little bit. That's a good shot of Eddie. He's smoking that cigarette. Look at that Wolfgang. This Wolfgang's got 3 hot rails, single coils in a 5-way. That's kind of neat. And then it's kind of apropos. I think I read this interview before I read or listened to the album, and when I listened to the album, I was like reading the interview later again. I'm like, this doesn't match up what they're saying about this album and how this thing sounds. Symphony of Construction. Marty Friedman doing a column. That's cool. Tony Iommi doing Black Sabbath stuff. John Petrucci article, warming up. Those are really good articles, these tablatures for some of this practice stuff. It's good to go back through and do it. Ain't Talking About Love, tablature. All this tablet in the back of the book. I'm kind of skip through this. November Rain. Everybody loves that song. I am not a fan of November Rain. I think it's kind of bloated. Sorry if everybody loves that. It's not my cup of tea. Schizophonic, Nuno Bettencourt playing Houston Kettner. That album didn't do very good, and he was really angry about how the industry kind of turned, and Extreme kind of got punted. Boy, he was negative. I remember seeing a recent interview after this where he disappeared for a while. All right, this is just about at the end of it, everybody. Yeah, if you can find this issue, there's a lot of interesting and kind of sad stuff when you read through that interview. It was an interesting perspective on where Eddie was at in his mind in '98 with Van Halen 3. So there you have it, Guitar World, March 1998. Who the F is Eddie Van Halen? The king is back.